I found out my husband was with my best friend. Then I found out something that made that feel like the small part of the story. I thought the worst part was finding out about Marcus and Jess. I thought nothing could be worse than that. 12 years of marriage, 15 years of friendship, and the two people I trusted most in the world had been lying to me simultaneously. I was wrong. 3 weeks after I found out, I got a phone call that made everything I'd already learned feel like the first page of a much longer story. And what was on the rest of those pages changed not just my present and my future, but my entire past. Every memory, every decision, every year of a life I thought I understood. My name is Laura. I'm 39. I was married to Marcus for 12 years. We met at 25, married at 27, bought a house in Austin, built the kind of life that felt solid from every angle I could examine it from. We had a daughter named Iris, who is 9 now, and who has her father's dark eyes and my stubbornness, which I've been told is a dangerous combination. Jess had been my best friend since college, 14 years. She was maid of honor at my wedding. She gave a speech that made everyone cry, the kind of speech that required real knowledge of who I was and what Marcus meant to me. She was Iris's godmother. She came to every birthday, every difficult moment, every ordinary Tuesday that needed company. She was the person I called when anything happened, good or bad, before I'd even processed what I was feeling. I want you to hold that for a moment. The maid of honor, the godmother, 14 years. I found out on a Saturday in September, the way people find out things they were never supposed to know. By accident, completely, with no warning and nowhere to put it. Marcus was out. Iris was at a sleepover. I was home alone for the first time in what felt like weeks, and I was using the time to do the kind of cleaning you only do when nobody's watching. The back of closets, the top of shelves, the places that accumulate what a shared life discards without meaning to. I found the phone in a box on the top shelf of Marcus's closet. A second phone, older model, plain case, no label. I stood on the stepladder holding it for a moment before I understood what I was holding. It was unlocked. The last message thread open on the screen was from a contact saved as a single initial, J. I read it standing on that stepladder in the closet until my legs went numb from standing still. Then I sat down on the floor of the closet and kept reading. It had been going on for 2 years, not a moment of weakness, not something recent. 2 years of messages, photos, plans, the specific casual shorthand of two people who had been conducting a private life alongside the public one. The messages were affectionate in the way that made clear this was not casual. They talked about me occasionally, not cruelly, which in some ways was worse, because cruelty would have been easier to be angry at. They talked about me the way people talk about a situation they feel guilty about and have decided to live with anyway. Jay was Jess. I knew before I confirmed it. Something in the specific rhythm of the messages, the references, the way certain sentences were constructed. I knew. I confirmed it anyway. 3 messages in, when Marcus referenced something that could only have come from Jess. I put the phone back in the box. I put the box back on the shelf. I climbed down the stepladder. I went to the kitchen and I stood at the sink for a long time with the water running and my hands under it. Not washing them, just standing there. When Marcus came home 2 hours later, I was sitting on the couch with a book I hadn't read a word of. I said hello. He said hello. We made dinner together. We ate it. We watched something on television. I did not say a single word about what I knew. Not that night, not the next day. I had learned in the hours between the closet and his return that I needed to understand more before I did anything. And 3 weeks later, I was very glad I had waited, because what I learned in those 3 weeks made everything I'd found in that closet into something much larger than I'd understood it to be. I called an attorney on Monday morning. Her name was Christine, and she had been recommended by a colleague. I told her what I knew. She gave me the framework I needed and told me to document carefully and change nothing that would alert Marcus before I was ready. I documented. I also, quietly, started asking questions I'd never thought to ask about our finances, our accounts, our investments. Marcus handled most of our money, which had always seemed practical and which I now understood differently. What I found, over 2 weeks of careful examination, was not what I was looking for, but was considerably more significant than what I'd expected. There were accounts I didn't know about, not hidden dramatically, just separate, personal, in Marcus's name only, holding amounts that didn't correspond to any income or investment I was aware of. I brought this to Christine. She brought in a forensic accountant. What the accountant found over the following week, I will try to describe as clearly as I can. Marcus had, over a period of approximately 4 years, been redirecting money from a consulting income stream I knew about but had never examined closely, from reimbursements, from a series of small transfers that individually meant nothing, into those separate accounts. The total was not catastrophic, but it was substantial, enough to matter significantly in a divorce settlement, enough to have been deliberate. And then the accountant found something else, a property. A condo in a neighborhood on the other side of Austin, purchased 3 years ago, in Marcus's name only. Payments made from the accounts I hadn't known existed. I sat in Christine's office when she told me this, and I felt something that wasn't quite any emotion I had a name for. Not anger. I was past the acute anger by then. Something colder and more clarifying. The specific sensation of a picture coming into focus that you hadn't realized was blurry. Christine asked if I wanted to know who the condo was registered to as an occupant. I already knew, but I said yes. Jess had been living in that condo for 2.5 years. Marcus had been paying her rent, her utilities, her life, with money redirected from our marriage, from the accounts that were supposed to be ours, from 4 years of careful, sustained financial misdirection. This was not an affair. This was a parallel life, fully funded, fully constructed, maintained for years alongside ours. I sat with that for a long time. Then I asked Christine what the phone call was that came in during our meeting. She'd stepped out to take it and come back with a particular expression. She said there was one more thing. The call had been from a contact of Christine's, a colleague who handled cases in a neighboring county, and who had, in the course of reviewing some documents, recognized a name. Marcus's name, specifically Marcus's name on a birth certificate. Filed 2 years ago. A child, a boy, now almost 2 years old, whose mother was listed as Jessica Ann Harlow, Jess's full name. I sat in Christine's office and I did not move for a long time. She gave me water. She did not speak, which was the right thing to do. She just sat across from me and let me be in it. A child, almost 2 years old, which meant that while Jess had been sitting across from me at Iris's 7th birthday party, while she'd been my emergency contact and my first call and the person I told everything, she had been pregnant with my husband's child. And Marcus had been supporting them in a condo 20 minutes from our house, with money taken from our shared life. I thought about every conversation I'd had with Jess in the past 2 years. Every coffee, every phone call, every time she'd asked how Marcus and I were doing and listened to my answer with the expression of someone who cared. I thought about Iris, who loved Jess, who had been told repeatedly that Jess was one of the most important people in our family. I thought about the speech at my wedding. 14 years, the maid of honor. Christine asked if I needed a moment. I said I needed several things, none of which were moments. I asked her to tell me everything she could do and in what order and how long it would take. She told me. I listened to all of it. Then I asked her to start immediately. I did not confront Marcus that night or the night after. I had learned something important in the weeks since the closet, that the person who acts first from emotion hands all the initiative to the other side. I was not going to do that. What I did instead was finish what Christine and the accountant had started. Every financial account documented, every asset identified and its position understood, every piece of evidence preserved in the legally appropriate form. Christine filed for divorce on a Thursday morning, serving Marcus at his office. Not at our house, not in a moment I controlled the setting of, but in the most functionally efficient place, where he would have to receive it in front of colleagues and with his professional composure intact. I also did something I want to tell you about separately, because it matters to me that I did it correctly. I called Jess, not to confront her, to tell her that I knew everything and that I did not intend to be in contact with her again, and that any communication regarding the divorce would go through Christine. I said it in 1 minute and 40 seconds. I know the time because I looked at my phone when it ended. She said my name twice, both times at the beginning, and I talked over the second time and kept talking until I was finished, and then I ended the call. I have not spoken to her since. I do not intend to. The child, the boy whose name I know and will not repeat here because he is almost 2 years old and did not choose any of this, is Marcus's legal and biological responsibility. Christine made sure that was established clearly in the settlement, along with everything else that needed to be established clearly. Marcus has obligations now that extend beyond what he planned for. That is a consequence of choices he made, and I did not engineer it as revenge. It is simply what is true, and truth has its own momentum once it starts moving. The divorce finalized 7 months ago. The settlement reflected 12 years of marriage, the financial misdirection the accountant had documented, and the specific circumstances that Christine argued effectively. I will not give numbers because they are still under agreement, but I will say that I did not walk away with less than I was owed. I walked away with exactly what I was owed, which, after everything, felt like a kind of basic justice I hadn't been sure I'd get. Iris is doing as well as a 9-year-old can do when her world has been rearranged without her consent. She asks questions I answer as honestly as her age allows. She is angry sometimes and sad sometimes and completely herself most of the time, which is the most I could ask for. She has a therapist she likes, a woman who specializes in children and who Iris describes as the lady with the cool fish tank, which tells me the fish tank is doing important work. Marcus has a life I know very little about and intend to keep knowing very little about. He is Iris's father, and I manage that reality with the care it requires for her sake, without any more contact than that requires. Some weeks are easier than others. I have no best friend. That is the loss I find hardest to locate. Not because I miss Jess exactly, but because I miss the version of Jess I believed existed for 14 years. That person was real to me. What I've had to accept is that the person I was friends with was, in significant part, a performance. And you cannot mourn a performance the same way you mourn a person. It's a different kind of grief, and it doesn't have a name I know of. I have a smaller circle now. 3 people I trust completely, who know everything and who have shown up in the specific, unglamorous ways that matter. Not the dramatic moments, but the ordinary ones. Tuesday evenings. The kind of friendship that doesn't perform itself. I think about the stepladder in the closet sometimes. The box on the top shelf. The phone I almost didn't reach for because I was in a hurry and it wasn't what I was looking for. If I hadn't reached for it, I would still be living inside a version of my life that was built on a foundation I didn't know was hollow. That thought used to frighten me. Lately, it doesn't. Knowing, even when knowing costs everything, is still better than not knowing. The truth was always there. I just finally had it in my hands. And once you have it, you decide what to build next. I'm building. If this one left you speechless, that was the intention. Some stories don't have a tidy ending, just a person standing in the wreckage deciding what comes next. If you made it to the end, thank you. Drop a like if this hit you somewhere real. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.